It doesn't.
Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of UmattR TV. I'm Madison Frost. I go to Aztec High School. I run track and I play soccer. And I'm also looking to further my education at New Mexico State University to go for elementary education.
Hi guys, I'm Monique Shim and I go to Kirtland Central High School. I'm an all-year-round athlete. I play volleyball, basketball, and I run track and field. I plan on majoring in forensic science to become a pathologist, and I plan on going to Arizona State University.
Hi guys, my name's Tyler Savell. I go to Farmington High School and I'm a wrestler and I plan on being a dentist.
Awesome. Well, today we have a special guest with us today, and so I'll let you introduce yourself.
All right, thanks, Madison. I'm Jeff Bourgeois. Have the pleasure of serving as CEO at San Juan Regional Medical Center.
Awesome. So where are you from, Mr. Bourgeois?
I was born and raised in San Antonio, Texas.
Awesome. Wow. How did you end up here?
Well, it's a long story. After graduating from college and eventually going to graduate school for a degree in healthcare administration in San Antonio at Trinity University, I started my healthcare career in Dallas, Texas, was there for 2 years, and then went into an administration role in a small town in Texas by the name of Fredericksburg. And I stayed at that hospital for almost 17 years. The last 9+ years I served as their CEO. From there I transitioned into a facility in San Antonio, which was a brand new hospital. I actually started my work there before the hospital was even opened. It was still under construction. And I stayed with that organization for about 8.5 years, and then really had a desire to get back to an independent, community-owned and governed nonprofit healthcare system, and that's what attracted me so much to San Juan Regional Medical Center.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So how does one become the CEO of a hospital?
Well, there are a number of career paths, actually. It usually requires some level of postgraduate education. The most traditional, when I joined, was a master's in healthcare administration. And there are any number of universities that offer that type of program now. When I started, I'm so old, Madison, when I started in Texas, there were only 2 programs. And so I selected the one that was closest, but also the one that was the oldest and more well-established, and that was Trinity. But also, it's more and more common these days to see physicians serving as CEOs in various types of healthcare organizations, and also degrees such as a Master's of Business Administration, and also even we're starting to see more and more nurses end up as CEOs of hospitals of various sizes. So there's a number of ways you can get into the position.
Awesome. So I just have one more question for you.
Yeah.
What made you want to join the medical field? Have you always wanted to do that, or was it just kind of learned along the way?
You know, I'm glad you asked me that. I think I mentioned to you all earlier, we have a daughter who's in her 2nd year of college, and she's interested in healthcare, and I'm trying to coach her to keep her options open. Healthcare is actually my 3rd career.
Wow.
So my undergraduate degree was in, of all things, petroleum land management. And I did that work right out of undergraduate school for about 3 years. And then I was caught up in an economic recession that particularly hit the oil and gas industry in West Texas, and I was laid off on the same day with the 2 other guys that I started work with. And so that was a real eye-opener for me. So I went back to San Antonio, Texas. I pursued a license in real estate, and then I did that for a couple of years, and that was a really tough time. The entire economy was in a recession in the late 80s, and in real estate, particularly in Central Texas, was very slow. So I eked out a very small living for those 2 years. But during that, what's important was I sought to understand what were my true career interests as well as aptitudes. And I actually went and sought some career counseling from a professional counselor who was able to give me a battery of tests to really kind of dig into my true interest and aptitudes, and out of that produced a list of career tracks that would seem to fit well with my interest. And on that list was something called hospital administration. I had never heard of it before until just then. And so I happened to know some people who were a few years ahead of me from my childhood education in high school that were doing that. And so I contacted them and went and met with them and interviewed them and learned about their career paths, and I found that was an interest for me. And so then I applied to graduate school, and the rest is history, as they say.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's really awesome.
Yeah.
I'll pass it off to Monique.
That is great. What is a typical day as the CEO of the hospital?
Monique, I will tell you there's no such thing as a typical day. So that's part of what I enjoy. It keeps every day's a, you know, I see new challenges almost every day. And I've been doing this at the executive level for almost 30 years now. And it never ceases to amaze me in an organization that is operationally as complex as a hospital. When you count up all the different departments within a hospital, it's well over 60 specific departments within one hospital, from the clinical care, the nursing and the radiology and the lab, et cetera, to all the other support departments, and then there's the whole financial services division, all the materials management. And so the complexity of that all having to work well together to come together to meet the needs of the patient is really interesting. So my typical days are 10 to 12 hours. 50 to 60 hours a week in a 5-day week is pretty typical for me and for most of our leadership team as well. And it's a lot of coordination of strategic objectives as we try to look at what's around the corner and what we need to be thinking about doing next, or where we need to be headed from a scope of services or other types of needs. And then there's also the day-to-day operational concerns that we still stay in touch with to make sure that what we're doing day-to-day is meeting the needs of those we serve.
Would you say some days are more stressful than most?
Oh, certainly. I've told people that you have to be, if you're going to be a hospital CEO, you have to be in it a long, long time in that role for long before you see everything that might possibly come across your desk just once. There are many days that are rewarding. Yesterday was particularly rewarding. We had some really good news on some fundraising efforts we're working on that were just made everybody smile. Today I had a pretty tough conversation with one of our physicians who was sharing with me his frustrations about some operational improvements he felt he needed in his clinic. So the range of emotions runs the gamut. I was telling Mrs. Campbell right before I came, as I was walking to the parking lot, I saw a gentleman with a walker who wasn't getting along very well, and I could tell he needed help. And so I stopped and made a call and had someone come out to meet him with a wheelchair, and I stayed with him until they arrived. And just talking to him about what his needs were, and it really kind of was a good example of why I think I'm in healthcare. It's the opportunity to serve others. I don't get the opportunity to interact with the patient at that level that frequently, but and part of that is because God didn't bless me with the clinical skills that you must have if you're going to be a forensic pathologist. But it's a desire to serve, and I think healthcare is really a calling, no matter where you are in the organization, and so that's rewarding for me.
That's great.
So with all the departments and people working, do you know how much employees San Juan has?
All in all, we have over 1,600 plus, Tyler. Now, a lot of that is full-time, but also there's quite a bit of part-timers. And so, if you kind of averaged all that out, it'd be about what we call a full-time equivalent of about 1,200.
Jeez.
Yeah.
How much beds does the hospital have?
We are licensed for 198 beds, and so that includes 182 that are what we call our acute care beds, so in the ICUs and on the regular inpatient nursing units and the OB unit, plus another 16 that are dedicated to inpatient rehab services.
So, what kinds of service would you do at San Juan? Is there several types of service?
Oh gosh, our scope.
How much?
That's one of the things that really attracted me, Tyler, to San Juan Regional Medical Center. For a community hospital of our size, we're not considered a big hospital, but we're not small and rural either. But given the size of this community, the scope of services we offer is really quite broad. We run a 24/7, 365 emergency department, which is a really important community benefit. We also offer obstetrical services for the delivery of new babies. We have a very well-rounded set of surgical specialties. So we do everything from routine bread and butter general surgery, which might be a hernia repair or taking care of someone's infected appendix, to really some complex spinal and brain surgery with the neurosurgeons we have in town, and then almost everything in between that you can imagine. We offer interventional cardiology services, so patients suffering a certain type of heart attack, we have interventional cardiologists that can go in with a catheter and open that blockage up. It's truly a life-saving procedure. What we don't offer would be the shorter list of things. So we don't offer open heart surgery. We don't offer truly neonatal intensive care services for those premature babies that are very premature, 32 weeks or less gestation. When those babies are born, they need a high-level neonatal intensive care. And when we have a patient present to us like that if that child is actually born at a hospital, then we will transfer the mother and the baby, most commonly to the NICU down at University Hospital in Albuquerque.
And the helicopter and stuff.
That's a plus for this community. We run air care services, which has both a helicopter and an airplane to transport patients to and from destinations all over the Four Corners. I'm excited this year we're actually getting a new airplane.
Wow.
So,
I didn't know you guys had an airplane.
Yeah, the current airplane we have is nearing its end of useful life. The FAA has regulation about how many hours the body of the airplane and engine of the airplane can have. So it's actually being built overseas, and then when it comes here, it'll be outfitted for the clinical equipment it needs to serve as an air ambulance.
That's cool.
Wow.
That is really
Yeah.
cool.
Well, another question we have for you is, for someone looking to go into the medical field, is there some job in the health career you would recommend for this generation to seek out?
I will tell you that healthcare is going to be in high demand for many, many years. I would encourage anybody interested in a healthcare career to keep your options open. Take advantage of opportunities to volunteer at the hospital or physician's office, and seek to learn about where your interest lies. Because if you're interested in healthcare and have an interest somewhere in that, you're going to be able to find a career path. And I think it offers a lot of promise for a young person in terms of being able to find a rewarding career, first and foremost. I would encourage each of you, and it sounds like you guys have already got pretty good ideas about what you want to do, but make sure that what you do after you get out of your education is something you truly like to do. Because at some point it's going to be a job, but if you can stay connected to your why you wanted to be an elementary teacher or forensic pathology or a dentist, stay connected to that even on the challenging days, and then you'll be able to find a long and rewarding career. So explore your options, seek opportunities to volunteer and learn about the different career fields. Take advantages of if your high schools have the HOSA type of organizations to learn about and get exposed to different healthcare careers. That's what I would recommend.
Great.
Does San Juan Regionals, with the pandemic going on, still offer volunteer work?
Right now, our volunteer services have been kind of put on hold. If you think way back to a year ago when the pandemic was first beginning, that seems like a decade ago right now. But, one of the first things we were learning about this new virus is that those at the greatest risk from really getting sick or even dying from the virus were older. Mm-hmm. And most of the volunteers at the hospital are retirees. So they're sharing their resources with us as volunteers in their retirement. But we also have a wonderful junior volunteer program that you guys might be aware of. We've had to put all that on hold until the rate of spread of the virus gets down to a level to where we feel comfortable in having those volunteers back in the hospital who help supervise the junior volunteers.
Where do you believe we are with the pandemic?
That's a great question. I can give you what I think today, Monique. I think 5 years from now, more importantly, we'll know more. This is such a novel virus. This is a once in a century, for us, a once in a lifetime experience. Right now, what we're seeing at the rate of spread is falling significantly. We are certainly past what we call our second wave. The question for us is, will there be a next wave? We certainly hope not. But we are managing well, and we expanded our footprint in the hospital to care for COVID patients to all of our 4th floor and essentially all of our 5th floor. We now have that reduced back to 5th floor is returned back to its normal use, which is for cardiology patients. And the footprint for the COVID patients on our 4th floor takes up just the ICU and another 19 beds immediately adjacent to the ICU. So it's reduced way down. We only had 13 positive patients in the hospital this morning, and that's down from a peak back in January, February of almost 90.
Wow.
So it's greatly reduced. And another marker we look at is the test positivity rate. So of the patients we test for COVID, how many test positive, and we kind of look over a rolling 7-day and a rolling 14-day average just to kind of level out the ups and downs from day to day. And that's down to just under 3% now, which is awesome. At the peak, back in January and February, it was around 27%.
I know, like, with the pandemic, how you guys opened, like, the new floor for actually treating the people with the disease, but, like, is there anything, like, I know it affects a lot of people, like, mentally, especially the youth. Is there any plan to help them?
What has really been remarkable is the impact on the virus on behavioral health. And often for people who never got infected with the virus, but the shutdown of the schools, the shutdown of the businesses, the social isolation for the elderly and others has really had a significant impact on mental health, not only here but everywhere. So we've offered a number of services for our staff who've had to deal with this. Another compounding factor was the stress with kids not being in school, particularly parents with younger children, where the kids couldn't stay home and supervise themselves. One or more of the parents was having to either leave work or quit their job or make some other accommodations, and that was really, really stressful. There's the economic impact of that, and then there's the psychological impact of that. So we provided some resources to our staff to access counselors and support. We have added telehealth services to our behavioral health clinic to help community members in seek of that kind of support, and try to have both on our intranet for our staff as well as our internet for the community access references to various access for behavioral health services.
So where we're sitting right now, is there anything we could have done better reflecting on the past year, knowing what we know with the pandemic?
Yeah. Madison, that's another question I wish you'd give me 5 years to answer. But, first of all, I want to say I'm very proud of how our teams responded to this. It truly is a once-in-a-lifetime circumstance. We are blessed with some both operational and clinical leaders at the hospital. One in particular who has special training in disaster and emergency preparedness. He has a fellowship training in that. He's an emergency medicine physician by training, but he did this extra fellowship in disaster and emergency preparedness. So there's a whole infrastructure around disaster preparedness that the healthcare community has learned very well over the past 2 decades. When you think back, you guys probably don't remember Hurricane Katrina, but out of that, it was just a horrible disaster where thousands of people were homeless overnight due to the flooding and home destruction in New Orleans and southern Mississippi. And so out of that grew an improved kind of framework and structure for hospitals and communities to respond to disasters and emergencies. So we had that structure at our hospital, and we drill on that every year. But when this virus was approaching us, I had 2 physicians specifically come to me and said, this is what's happening overseas. We need to get ready because it's coming to our country. And, you know, my job is to trust the judgment of those clinical professionals. And I said, okay, so what do we need to do? And so they said, we need to stand up our incident command center. So we did that. We began assigning roles and then built the whole structure for which we would respond. And we had to make countless numbers of changes and innovations to how we would care for patients and also protect our caregivers and our visitors throughout the organization. So that's what I'm really proud of. Madison, to answer your question, what would we do differently? You know, I think we've learned some things about, I wish we would have had telehealth stood up more robustly before the pandemic hit compared to what and we've learned a lot, so that's one thing we will continue. Having a stockpile of PPE, right, the personal protective equipment for the caregivers, having a stockpile on that so that should the supply chain get interrupted like it did about a year ago, we know we have an adequate supply. What really was to our benefit was how the community stepped in and helped us with that, with homemade masks. The college and a local business here have 3D printers, and so they were making components for the face shields for us so we could build basically homemade face shields. They worked perfectly. I was up in our ICU today. Some of them are still in service today. And a lot of those, they're plastic parts that are interchangeable and replaceable. You can replace them as they wear down. So those are a couple of the lessons learned.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That is super awesome.
Yeah.
Well, we'll just open up the floor this time. Do you have any questions for us? Anything?
Well, tell me about the UmattR program and why you all are interested in it, got involved with it.
Well, to me, the UmattR program is extremely unique and very cool, and I'm super proud to be a part of it because it really promotes staying drug and alcohol free and really just helping the youth around our community, which is really awesome, and giving them an outlet and really a help for everyone around the community, which I think is awesome. I love to help, and I love kids. I am super proud to be a part of the UmattR team.
Good.
I agree with everything she said. I really think it is a unique program, and to help the youth, I've seen so many of the youth around our county not doing so well, and I feel like having this program is like what she said, an outlet to help them, and it's just really great.
Good.
I love showing them that there's different ways to stay alcohol free, you know, just like find hobbies, and I like telling them about hobbies and get into sports, and I just like being part of it because like I think a main part of is telling the kids to get around the right friend group, and like UmattR's like the perfect friend group because they all have the same, like I'm not gonna be a forensic
but we have the same morals and values.
Like we all drug and alcohol free and
well,
just trying to help kids.
Well, that is really encouraging as a parent to see this program in our community, and I commend you all for your commitment to staying drug and alcohol free. I think you guys obviously have your acts together, and with the career plans, life plans you have ahead of you, really makes me feel good about our future. So.
We appreciate that. Thank you so much. And thank you for joining us today. It was really an honor to have you here today because without the support of the hospital and local businesses, we wouldn't be able to do what we do. So
yeah, I agree. Well, it's been my pleasure. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And thank you for tuning in to another episode of the UmattR TV. Don't forget to check out our social media pages and our website, and we'll see you next time.